Inwood, New York City. Welcome to Inwood Artworks On Air. It's where we meet the musicians, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes who make their home what we affectionately call Upstate Manhattan. I'm your host, Aaron Sims, and this is Live and Local. It's our podcast dedicated to showcasing the musicians of Upper Manhattan. We talk with them about what they do, and best of all, listen to them perform live right here in one of our favorite local venues. Today, we are welcome and just excited to see Monica Bauchwitz and Karl Kramer-Johansen. Hailed as an excellent violinist by the Washington Post, Monica Bauchwitz performs extensively in chamber music, orchestral, and solo settings. She has studied and worked both in the United States and Europe, a graduate of the Eastman School of Music and the Conservatoire de Geneve. She has held positions with the Orchestra de la Suisse Romande in Geneva, Switzerland, and the Esbjerg Ensemble, the National Danish Chamber Ensemble. Ms. Bauchwitz is the founder of the Manhattan chamber music series Concert in the Heights. The series brings together world-class musicians for performances and educational projects and is the concertmaster and artistic director of the conductor-less string orchestra of New York City. She serves in the faculty of Concordia Conservatory and the College of Mount St. Vincent. Norwegian horn player Karl Kramer-Johansen is a much sought-after chamber musician, soloist, and recitalist. As a member of the Jupiter Symphony Chamber Players and the Dorian Wind Quintet, he performs regularly in New York City as well as touring across the country. He is a winner of many prizes and awards, including the two-time winner of the American Horn Competition and the George and Elizabeth Gregory Award for Excellence in Performance, the American Scandinavian Society Cultural Award, as well as a 2010 working grant from the North Manhattan Arts Alliance. We're thrilled to have them both here today to play for you. Ladies and gentlemen, Monica Bauchwitz and Karl Kramer-Johansen. Well, that was just lovely. Thank you so much for being here, Monica and Karl.
Thanks for having us.
You betcha. You betcha. So, would you mind telling our listeners what you just performed?
That was 2 movements of a piece by Telemann, the German Baroque composer, originally written for 2 violins. It's called Gulliver's Suite, and it's based on the Swift novel of Gulliver's Travels. And perhaps the most interesting part of this piece is the way it's notated. One of the movements, not the one that we played, is written in a very unusual meter, 3/64, and this is to depict the little people. So he has very small note values, and then to depict the giant people, there's a movement that's in 24/1. When you play it, it doesn't sound like this at all, but it's interesting the way it looks on the page.
Yeah.
But it's something that we thought that we could play together and have fun with.
And you're a big artist in a little neighborhood, so it makes perfect sense, right? But it is interesting too, like thematically how it was written with that in mind, with Gulliver's Travels.
Yep.
Very on nose for the story. Well, that's fantastic, and loved it. And we have to start at the beginning because we need to find out where you two met and how you met.
Oh, well, we actually met in the Esbjerg Ensemble in Denmark.
Okay.
I had been working in Geneva, Switzerland, Orchestra, Suisse Romande, and then I decided, you know what, I wanted to just more focus on chamber music. So I auditioned for this job in Denmark at the Esbjerg Ensemble. I got the job, and then a year later, Karl, who is Norwegian, decided to audition for the same job, and we met in this small town, Esbjerg, in a large island in Denmark, the Jutland, and we worked together for a couple of years, and that's how, yes, the romance started.
Well, and continues, I hope.
Well,
Yes.
yes.
Obviously, you can hear it in the music, folks, right? Very good. Well, were you both always called to music from a young age? When did you guys start performing?
I never considered any other profession myself. I started playing piano when I was around 5 or 6 years old. Started playing the horn when I was 9, and pretty much decided around age 15, 16 that I wanted to be a professional horn player.
Wow. You knew early.
Yes.
I think for me, I started violin actually only at 7 years old, and most professional players start at least by 5,
Mm-hmm.
just for muscle development and everything. So I was 7, but I had initially wanted to play the harp, but I was too small. So they decided, okay, violin, why not? And then I think for me, I started doing more serious playing by the time I was maybe 11 and 12. And I got into a flow in summer music festivals where it was kind of very serious player. So I guess by that time, sort of in my early teens, that I thought, you know what, I think I'll do this. It's kind of exciting and challenging. And
Did you know that at both early age too, as teenagers? Did you feel like you were on track?
Well, I kind of did because I had these festivals that I was doing where it was pretty competitive already at a pretty young
I was
age.
thinking, it's like you kind of, it's like being an athlete.
Yeah,
You know who you're running with, right?
You do kind of. You kind of have to see the level of other players who are doing these very competitive festivals, and you kind of know how you fit in.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty young
Did it
age,
push
yeah.
both of you to become better players?
I think it absolutely, it has to, or you have to decide to do something else.
Right.
I think if you kind
And
of,
like you're saying, there was no other option for you, Karl.
There was no other option. I always had my doubts if I was on the right track, if I was doing what I needed to do. I guess still to this day, I'm not really sure if that's
Well, let me
the
say,
case or
you're
not.
pretty good, okay?
yeah, it's pretty good.
I'm not telling you I'm the stamp of approval or anything, but you're here, right? You're on Inwood Works on air. Come on, give me a break. No, but seriously, though, you both, in all seriousness, though, your bios speak for themselves, and the journey is the journey, right? It's like it's not an end. There's never the pot
You're
of gold.
forever
right?
going.
It's
Forever.
in perpetuity, right?
Yeah,
and I
you
think
have to.
that's the stamp of approval, right? That you're still doing it.
Well, his grandfather actually was a great-grandfather.
Great-grandfather.
Was a very famous composer in Norway. In fact, in Oslo, they have a bust of him on one street.
Would you mention his name, please?
His name is, it's so silly, his name. His name is Jolly. It's spelled Jolly.
Yoli, yeah.
Yeah, and he has a little street named after him, and
Yeah.
there's a bust of him right
Wow.
He was a
So,
very, very
How
famous
proud you must be.
there. Oh yes, absolutely. And when I took up serious music studies, all of my professors had known my great-grandfather, who passed away before I was born.
Okay, so you never knew him.
I never knew him.
But I'm sure he's looking down very proud of you, I'm sure.
I hope so.
Absolutely. That extra pressure on you, though, right, from the professors? Saying,
A little
okay,
bit.
let's go. You have a legacy to uphold, right?
A little bit.
Monica, did you have any, do you come from a musical or an artistic
Well,
family
the thing
at all?
is, yes, it's a cultural. Everyone played 2 instruments. I'm the youngest of 4. My parents, though, my father was a research chemist, my mother a psychiatrist, but they'd all studied piano, some music as a cultural enhancement. But I was the first professional musician.
Wow.
Yep.
Well, congratulations for both of you for still being here.
Yes.
And it's saying a lot when you don't. You have the support from family is everything.
Yep.
So you hear that out there, folks. Please encourage your children and your peers to keep either culturally as a side gig. Who knows? It might turn into their full-time gig.
Yes, it's
you never
so
know how
important.
people develop. Monica, you've played with many esteemed groups, but as I mentioned, you also have formed a few groups, including that concerts that put on in here in the Heights, pre-pandemic quite a bit, I remember, as well as the String Orchestra of New York.
Mm-hmm.
So what gave you the impulse to take on the administrative side, which is a whole different artistic? People don't think managers and producers are artistic. They would be wrong.
Yes, I know.
Because there's curation involved, there's contracting, there's shaping, there's performance, not to mention relationship building pieces for audiences and specific audiences like the ones in Inwood and Washington Heights and Riverdale and Northwest Bronx. So yeah, what was the impulse to take this on?
I think what happened is when I came back from Europe, from Denmark, from that job, and then Karl, came with me, basically. Anyway,
Extra suitcase, Karl came in and
a couple of months later. But so I think for me, I found that there was room for it. And I found this community, which we lived in Washington Heights. My father was a Holocaust survivor. And so there was so many Jewish elderly who love music. And so I thought there was a real space there. So we started the series at the Fort Washington Collegiate Church on 181st Street. And we were there 10 or 11 years, I guess, before they started renovations. And then we had moved here already, but into Inwood. But I thought it was a place that people could really appreciate, which they did, culturally, something that's not downtown. Mm-hmm. And then there were other communities that began to be engaged with it and sort of got involved and interested. And so for me, there was just, I felt somehow, a desire to do that. And so with Concerts in the Heights, of course, Karl and I are completely involved in that together. Now we're up at Lehman College, the art gallery there. And which is also Morris Heights, apparently. So it kept with the name perfectly.
Don't you love how the realtors keep changing the names of the neighborhood for you?
So that was perfect. But anyway, so that series is there, and that's concerts monthly. And so that's kind of what got that started. It was the initial kernel was in the Washington Heights community. And then I think for String Orchestra of New York City, I always loved string music. And it's a conductor-less group, which somehow nothing, against conductors. But as leading it, you feel you're more immersed in it, and players are more responsible, and I feel they play better. They give more when they're connected right to it, like a large string quartet. So I think that was just an impulse that I felt, a desire to have kind of those kind of groups.
Well, there's obviously a room for it. I mean, it's this neighborhood. Listen, I started a company based off the fact that we're an embarrassment of artists with not too many venues to do. But when Monica and I have spoke ad nauseum off camera about the lack of physical venues that support live performance in all shapes and forms, not just music, but dance and opera and professional theater and non-professional theater for all matters.
Yeah.
So we could use more of that. So I thank you for all your efforts and how you brought here. And I know, Karl, by default, you're part of it, whether you like it or not.
I like it.
I know you like it, but
he's composing a lot of the music that we're performing in both groups.
Well,
actually.
you kind of lead me right in my next question to Karl about, your compositions. Are being involved with this, are there any particular pieces that you're particularly proud of that have come out of this?
Yeah, there are several pieces that I am proud of. We did a big project with actually a little bit of a collaboration between the two organizations, String Orchestra of New York City and Concert in the Heights, where I had arranged a size solo violin sonata for 6 violins. This was a pandemic project. We wanted to, we couldn't do the full orchestra, but we wanted something that had an orchestral implication. So we thought, okay, let's feature the violin section. And this is kind of an unusual grouping, just 6 violins and nothing else. And then after we had done that, we talked about how the music is so dramatic and has such a narrative arc that we wanted to actually expand it into a dramatic work. And I sort of stumbled into writing some monologues myself, and we produced this with an actor. And then on the same program, I had also arranged Bach's second cello suite for the same 6 violins. And then I'd written little response pieces to each of the movements that we had 2 young, lovely dancers choreograph. So this was, for me, a super exciting project that tied together music, drama, dance, and we got a chance to do it 5 or 6 times, and the musicians were fabulous, and I thought we had a wonderful time learning this and presenting it.
Right, we were at a very charming theater downtown, the Tank.
Sure.
Yeah, it's really charming.
I know. I used to know the person who used to run the Tank many years, and now it's changed over. But Tank does great work, particularly for emerging experimental theater and music.
Yeah.
What's awesome. Well, it leads me, so tell me what's next for you guys. What can we look forward to this coming maybe 24 or 25?
Yeah, we are sort of in the process of developing some new programs. We're talking about doing a program for String Orchestra of New York City, focusing on the Harlem Renaissance. This is sort of in embryonic form yet, so just sort of a working idea. We're for Concert in the Heights, we are preparing one program featuring the music and the arrangement of Margaret Bonds
For our Women's History Month,
Very
March.
nice.
Any other program that we talked about?
We haven't solidified yet, but but in String Orchestra of New York City, we have probably the season after with Jeffrey Mumford. We have we won the Kusevitsky Foundation grant for String Orchestra of New York City, and so that premiere will be probably 25, 26, or spring of 25.
Okay.
So that's a new piece written for us.
Very good.
Jeffrey Mumford.
Well, we're looking forward to it once you solidify plans, and please let us know, and we can help promote and get it out there.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much.
You
That'd be
betcha.
great.
And speaking of, where can we go to send people to find out more about your work?
Well, we have 2 websites, concertsintheheights.org and stringorchestraofnyc.org, and that has our yearly program and videos and from performances and so all the info about us, sort of background. Yeah, and then you have one for your wind quintet.
Yes, DorianWindQuintet.org. I also have a personal website if anyone wants to check that out, KarlKramer-Johansen.com.
Very good. Well, I can't thank you both enough for being here, and
Thank
it's
you
always
so
wonderful
much.
to put the spotlight on local artists like yourself. And our listeners, you have your marching orders to go check out more of their work. And who knows, maybe we can get you collaboration with Inwood Artworks sometime at a
We'd love
concert
to.
here in Inwood on your home turf.
Yes.
The higher than the heights, we call it. I don't know what the heights of the heights, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, that
However
sounds
we're
good.
going to say before you fall into the Hudson or
Yeah.
the Spite and Dival, that is. Again, well, Karl, Monica, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
It's an absolute
Aaron.
pleasure.
Thanks so much.
You bet. You bet. Well, folks, thanks to Monica and Karl for joining me on this live and local edition of Inwood Artworks On Air. Again, it's where we meet the musicians, writers, theater makers, and artists of all stripes and make their home here in northern Manhattan. If you have a moment right now, please show us some love by rating and reviewing this podcast 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. Many thanks to Church of Good Shepherd here for hosting us, and to Heightsites.com for uptown promotional support. Hey, you can support On Air and all of our programming by making a tax-free donation at inwoodartworks.nyc/donate or via Venmo at Inwood Artworks. Be sure to follow us on social media and check out all other programming, which includes the Inwood Film Festival, Filmworks Alfresco, pop-up art galleries, other live performances, and so much more. Inwood Artworks On Air is proud to be supported in part by public funds from the New York City Department of Cultural Affairs in partnership with the City Council. And Inwood Artworks programming is made possible by the New York State Council on the Arts with the support of the Office of the Governor and the New York State Legislature. From the top of Manhattan and the bottom of our hearts, thank you so much for tuning in. This is Aaron Sims for Inwood Artworks On Air.